One, two, one, two. Good morning, everyone. So Startup Village is about to begin. It already began. Our first speaker of the session is Mishel Garno. She's the founder and CEO of Restaurant Group. And now she will talk about resilience, adaptability, compassion for community, and yourself. Mishel, please take it away.
Oh, yes, I need to unmute. Hello, everybody. Good morning. I'm afraid I can't see you, so it's a little bit disconcerting. I'm sort of talking to a logo here, but I'll do my best. I am coming to you from Hong Kong. I have just come back from Shanghai a couple of weeks ago. So I also have recent experience of needing some resilience and unpredictability. It is still a difficult situation in Shanghai, as you all probably know, with most of the city still in lockdown. So you can imagine if you had just started a business there, how you would be dealing with it. And that actually is the case for some friends of mine. I will just give you a little bit of background about myself. I started working when I was 14. I worked in restaurants. I finished school. I went to university. I dropped out of university. I loved working in restaurants. I kept going back to restaurants. And now I've had a 50-year career in food and beverage in Hong Kong and Shanghai and Beijing. So I've sort of had fairly broad experience. Well, in my own world. I founded the company myself. I started with no money, so I had to talk other people into giving me money. So I'm sure you have all had to learn that as startups. One of the things you really have to do is learn how to ask for money and get over being embarrassed about that. But what I really wanted to talk to you about quite a lot of things, but sorry, I'm just getting my thoughts together. I've kept going back into F&B and I loved it and I still love it, even though I don't actually have a restaurant. I've just closed a business. I closed it in February in Shanghai. So in many ways, I was extremely lucky with my timing. And in some ways, I have been lucky with my timing in quite a lot of the stuff that I've done. Sometimes not so lucky. But the first thing I would like to say to you about, the beginning of your adventure here is you have to do something that you like. And if you don't like it, you don't have to love it, kill for it, be passionate about it. But if you don't like it, you haven't got much chance of being successful at it. So I think, it's not success in business, no matter what the business is, because fundamentally all businesses come down to the same basic sort of premise. It's a life. You're there to make money, to enjoy it, hopefully, to employ other people, to create some economic benefit all around. And if you don't do all of that, then you're sort of not really fulfilling what business is all about. But I think there is a little bit of luck needed in business, but it's not only luck. And, being a woman who started my own business, I was very often told that I was very lucky. It's like, oh, you're just lucky. You're lucky that you were in this place. You're lucky that you're that. Well, yes, there's a little bit of luck that's needed, but luck only takes you so far. The rest of it is really hard work. And if you don't like it, I go back to my point, if you don't like what you're doing, you're not going to like the hard work. You have to be happy to do all that hard work. But what I want to talk to you today is we'll go back to resilience and adaptability. I mean, they're fairly self-explanatory if you ask me, but we can talk about that later. I want to talk to you today about looking after yourself. And that might sound a bit sort of flaky and airy-fairy, but it's not. I do quite a bit of mentoring, and especially mentoring women. I mentor both men and women. But I find especially with women that when I ask them what they do for themselves and how they look after themselves, they say, I don't have time to do that. I have too many other commitments. I've got a husband, children, a business, parents, siblings, community commitments. I've just got so many commitments that I don't have time for myself. And, I have to sometimes drum it in. I'm working with a woman at the moment, and she's running a carbon capture company, and she's a startup, she's a scientist, she's started it herself. I had to talk to her maybe 3 or 4 times, and by the final time I said, I'm telling you, make some time for yourself. She said, you said that like 6 times now. I said, yes, because you didn't hear me. You didn't hear me because you weren't really listening, because for some reason you've got a block in your head that you don't have time for yourself. You have to make time for yourself. If you don't do that, you don't know how to look after yourself. You don't give yourself some space and some energy in your head to make decisions. So when you have to make a decision about something, and, many decisions in business, you have to make them every day, especially in a startup, and, you haven't got structures there behind you. So you really do have to make decisions, and you really do need a clear head. And you can't have that if your head is crammed with everybody else's crap and you haven't got time for yourself. So I really, really cannot stress to you how important this is. When you give yourself some time, you will, and it doesn't have to be. My mentee in the carbon capture business, it took me 3 weeks of talking to her for her to give herself 24 hours out, to throw away the phone, put everything away, go off email, give herself 24 hours out. Now, maybe you're all much more chilled than that and you don't need this advice, but my guess is in any startup, it's just endless. There is always work to do. There are always people to look after, and there are endless demands. And if you don't make some time for yourself, you are not giving yourself the space that when you do need to make big decisions, you need that time, you need that energy. So I think that, you have to fit yourself into your own schedule. Then I think when you do that, you can then understand why other people need time for themselves. And maybe some of you have got small teams, maybe some of you have got big teams, but in those teams, you have people, colleagues, staff, and they are your most valuable asset. You cannot do everything yourself. There is just no way. You can't. Nobody can. Everybody only has 24 hours. It doesn't matter if you're the president, you only have 24 hours, but you have to rely on your team. And you need to look after your team. And if you don't look after yourself, I think you don't know how to look after your team. I set up my own business in the late 80s in Hong Kong. And I then went to Shanghai, then went to Beijing, and did restaurants that were very successful, very well lauded, won lots of awards, did all of that sort of thing, made money, lucky, for us, but luck and hard work. But, I have to say that the most important thing that I ever had was, yes, of course, the customers are important, but without the staff, you can't do it. And I have people who work with me who started working with me in 1990. And the first person I ever employed in Shanghai still works with me. I have a long, dedicated team. They are fantastic. And without them, I would really have gone crazy, especially in China. I'm not Chinese. I didn't even speak any Chinese when I got there. So, it seemed to be an impossible sort of idea. But, this person I employed, she still works with me now, and she's actually having to deal with everything while I'm in Hong Kong. And I was thinking about what is important and why have I got these staff? And people say to me, you're lucky. Well, yeah, okay, fine. But I think that the key to keeping really good staff is to, one, respect their time. And if you don't respect your own, you can't respect anybody else's. And also to treat them with fairness, respect, acknowledgement of where they're good. It doesn't mean that you can't tell people off or you can't, when people are not doing things properly, but you have to be fair and you have to treat people with respect. And you have to respect their time as well as yours. So I think if you do that, you will find that you can build a team, because really you can't start anything without that team, whether there's only 2 or 3 of you to begin with, and you end up being 300 or 3,000, whatever it is, you need to start somewhere. I'm going to move on a little bit to actually to not worrying about things. You know, crap happens. It does every single day. You just can't worry about things all the time. And I know that's easy to say. And I know that I've also spent time worrying about things. But I tell you, at the end of the day, decisions are made. You have to make those decisions yourself. And those decisions will decide the outcome. So you need to have space in your head, and you need to have the time to clear your head and make those decisions. And I think that the important thing, and this is where, for me, resilience and adaptability comes in. You know, adaptability is actually looking at something and thinking, oh my God, there's a real change of circumstance going on here. What do I decide? How do I move forward with that decision? And you can't do that unless you have taken on all of the experience that you have, you know, whatever you've learnt from your successes, but especially from your failures, you bring that with you. And I would just like to tell you a little bit about my journey in this. I started a business in Hong Kong in 1989. It was very successful very quickly. I had no money. I borrowed the money right at the beginning. We managed to repay all of the debt. I borrowed about 3 million Hong Kong dollars, $500,000 US dollars, roughly, at that time, which was a lot of money in the late 80s. And we managed to completely repay it in less than 12 months to the people we borrowed it from. So it was a great success. The business was a great success. And, you know, it kept going, and Hong Kong was like the place to be, and it was growing through all of that time. I then went to Shanghai, where I had another great big success. I opened a restaurant on the Bund right at the beginning of 1999, so 10 years later. And that was also a big success straight away. There were a million problems to deal with, as you can imagine, but we were very successful, and it took a little bit longer, a couple of years to pay back all of the money, but we did that too. Before that, in between, I opened a restaurant in Shanghai after we'd had the first success that failed. And I could see it was the wrong thing. I hadn't done my research. It was the wrong thing in the wrong place at the wrong time. I mean, I'd been lucky having 2 times the right thing in the right place at the right time. But I learnt a lot from that mistake. And actually, I think I made a very quick decision. I went off on a trip. I came back and I decided to close it. So it had only been open 8 or 9 months, and I just thought, this is just never going to work. It's just not right. So it was a big admission of failure. And I think the hardest thing to deal with was admitting that I'd made a big screw up. But once I got over that and moved on, you know, it was fine. And actually what was interesting, the friend said to me at the time, is that, you know, people don't really remember the failures. You remember it, but actually you've got to move on from them because other people don't really remember it. And I said to him, he ran a magazine. I said, really? And he said, yeah, don't you remember when we did that, you know, Chinese edition? I said, oh yeah, what happened to that? He said, that was a disaster. I said, you know, it's true, actually. People don't really remember, but you need to learn from the failures that you have. And if you don't take those experiences on board, when you really have a big failure, then you can't deal with it. And you end up having a nervous breakdown, and you end up worrying the whole time, and you end up making really bad decisions. So I would really just like to say in that, skipping on the time, I'd really like to say in that when you do have to make a decision, and I think this is also coming back to the resilience and adaptability, give yourself as many options as you can. When I had to make a decision on closing a business last year, and I had to do it by myself. I couldn't tell anybody else. Only my first employee is still with me. She was the only one who knew that I basically had to make this decision by a particular date. And then I had to announce it. Then I had to deal with thousands and thousands and thousands of people all being upset about it. And of course, the staff all losing their job. So I think that when you do have to make those decisions, I can tell you how I did it. I sort of sat down, I wrote down every option I could think of, every single option that I thought and what the outcomes might be. I then put it aside and I went back to it. And then I looked at it again, and then I put it aside again. And then I knew I had to make a decision by a particular date. And I pulled it all out about 3 days before, and I looked at it all again, and I thought, I know what my decision is going to be. And I decided to close that business out. Now people say to me, my God, you're so lucky that you closed, before a big lockdown in Shanghai. We had a business that was costing about 2 or 3 million RMB a month in break even. Just to get to break even points. It's a lot of money to be thrown out with no income. So that is sort of one of the processes that I would recommend to you when you have to make those sorts of big decisions in your life. Sorry, I made myself some notes. I think actually I'll go back to my point about time, because if you haven't got space in your head and you haven't made a little bit of space for yourself, you make rash decisions. And to not make rash decisions, you need to have some clearness in your head. And that can only happen when you're a little bit calmer. And if you work all the time, I've worked with so many people who just never stop working. They go mad. You have to pace yourself at work. And I know that's easy for me to say when you're all sitting there starting things up, and it takes a massive amount of determination. But, believe me, you need to make some time for yourself. Otherwise, you cannot make those good decisions. I just wanted to go through that. And I'd like to leave some time for questions. I don't know, I don't know. I haven't been to Russia since the 90s, so it's very different to, when I first went there. So I don't know what I can really tell you much about your own businesses, but I think that the fundamental principles of business are really the same, and they are a little bit of luck, a lot of hard work, and that's how it goes. So I wish you all the best of luck. I wish you all a great conference over the next 2 days. Get to meet people. You can meet everybody you can. If you need mentoring, ask for it. You have to also, actually, one of the things I wanted to talk about a little bit was just, what to expect from a mentor. A mentor can't tell you what to make, what business decision to make. They can only really help you see that decision yourself. Nobody else can make decisions for your business except you. You need to have the headspace to be able to make those decisions. But a mentor can help you see things more clearly. So if you feel that a mentor would help you, find one. Really find a mentor. There are people who are willing to help you, but don't expect that they're going to do everything for you, because they're not. I speak from both ends of this. So I wish you all the best. I would like to open it up for questions. And yeah, handing back over to Elena or whoever's there.
Yes, Michelle, hi. So thank you very much for that session. I mean, it was very interesting to listen to it. We do have a question from the audience, a very shy girl. So right now I'm working as an interpreter. So you talked about being a successful woman, making time for yourself, which of course nowadays is very, very a hard thing to do. So the question is that you work in the restaurant industry. It is mostly, as you know, of course, as any other industry, mostly male-dominated. So what made you go into that industry yourself as a woman, and especially open a restaurant in a Western country?
Well, I came to live in Hong Kong in the mid-'80s, and I actually loved cooking, so I cooked. And actually, I was talking to an 11-year-old today, and she told me her mother's a scientist, and she said, I don't want to be a scientist, I want to be a cook. I said, she wants to be a famous chef. Good for you. Go for it. Practice cooking. It is extremely male-dominated, and it's extremely chauvinistic. And I don't know if it's all women in the audience. I'm not sure, is it? I'm not sure. Is this a conference of women or mixed or?
No, it's actually everybody, but the question was from a young girl, yes.
Yeah. I think that why not? I mean, if you're going to do something, then start a business with it. I mean, I had my own ideas of how I felt a restaurant should be, and I didn't feel that there was any restaurant in Hong Kong that I liked. So I thought, well, you know, I've worked in restaurants for 10 years. I know what I like. I know what's good. I've lived in London. I've lived in Greece. I've lived in Europe. I've lived in Australia. I'm from Australia. I'd come to Hong Kong and I just thought, I can't believe that there's not a sort of modern, affordable, comfortable, casual, but serious restaurant. So I think there was a real gap in the market, and I felt that there was a gap because there was nothing I liked. And I thought, I'm not that unusual. You know, it seems that I like lots of restaurants in, you know, London and other cities. So why isn't there something like that here? So I could see that there was a gap in the market, and I decided, you know, to go for it and go ahead. It took me a long time. It took me a long time to find I had very strong ideas about the place that I wanted to be. I didn't want to be in an office building on the 5th floor. You know, I wanted to be in an independent space. So for me, opening a business was, why not? Why not risk it? I mean, you're all there. You're either you're planning on starting something, or you've started something, or you're fully into it. You doesn't matter that it's a male-dominated industry. So what? That's not going to stop any women doing anything, I hope.
Well, amen for that. And I have a question from me personally. So your whole life you were in the restaurant business. You know, you opened your own one. You worked at restaurants. So where do you see now in a couple of years? Maybe doing something else, trying something new, because why not?
It's true. But actually, one of the things that for me, the restaurant was also a place for community. So I did many, many other things. And I actually wasn't very hands-on in the restaurant the last, 10, 15 years. I mean, I don't work on the floor. I worked with a chef. I worked with all of our chefs to write every menu that we ever wrote. I come from a cooking background. I cooked for 10 years. But, I also ran a literary festival. I set up a chamber music festival. I started a mentoring walks program in Beijing and Hong Kong and Shanghai. Actually, Beijing and Shanghai. Somebody else started in Hong Kong. I did a lot of not-for-profit work. I traveled a lot. Running a literary festival was absolutely fantastic. I met so many interesting people. And I love chamber music. So I set up a chamber music festival and competition. So I think that no matter what you do, for me, the restaurant was a base. And the first business in Hong Kong, we were always involved with community work as well. And that was my decision, how to spend my time and actually my staff's time too, because you have to pay for them to be doing, not-for-profit work. So I think that for me, I don't feel that I've only worked in the restaurant business. I've met so many different people and I've done tons and tons of different things. I sit on a couple of different boards. I sit on a Global Australians board. I sit on a couple of not-for-profit boards. So actually, I think you need to gather as much experience as you can, which when you first start your business is actually quite tough because you don't have very much time and you really do. All your time is committed to doing your business. That's why I say to you, make time for yourself. And making time for yourself doesn't necessarily mean sitting around watching TV. It actually means making time for yourself to do something else that's about you. So whether that's exercising, whether that's reading, whether that's hiking, whether that's doing some other work that takes you away from the thing that you're having to think about every day. So for me, I had so many different things. And actually, I'm now bought a very small house in a village in France, and I'm hoping next year to set up a literary festival there.
Well, these are some very good plans.
Speak French.
Who does? Well, we would like to thank you for this very, very interesting session. Me personally, I will email you a couple of questions that I have, because unfortunately we do not have any more time. So again, thank you very much. Thank you. And hope to see you soon, and all the best. Thank you very, very much. Okay, bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
ВК-звонки доступны везде и без ограничений, в 4К и с активным шумоподавлением. Будьте всегда на связи в ВК-звонках.
Встречайте приложение ВК-клипы, удобный видеоредактор, уникальные маски и эффекты и стильные фильтры для обработки. Еще быстрее, проще, вертикальнее. Теперь в отдельном приложении ВК-клипы. Место встречи талантов.
Привет! Классно шьешь, варишь, печешь и вообще что-то производишь в Москве? Тогда сейчас самое время поверить в то, что ты делаешь, заявить о себе и занять свое место на рынке, пока другие не заняли. Смотри, это твоя дверь в новый мир. Открывай и узнай, чем мы можем тебе помочь. Москва-24 для бизнеса. Давай с нами.
Журнал «Эксперт» — это российский и международный бизнес, общественно-политические процессы, аналитика и прогнозы, рейтинги и интервью. Специальные условия на подписку на сайте expert.ru.